some very special advice. So if you need a little warmth and some wonderful information, tune in today at 12:05 over WOR New York.
Thank you, Joan. That does our morning. Next, Sherry Henry right after the news. John R. in the PM New York People this afternoon. And John A. here to say thank you all very much for tuning in today. It's 10 o'clock and over WOR New York. Lou Adler has the news.
Good morning. Investigations are underway into 2 incidents of violence in the metropolitan area this morning involving truckers. Police say 4 people are being questioned in connection with a sniper incident on Interstate 84 near Cheshire, Connecticut. The truck driver was not injured, but his rig was damaged. And in Edison, New Jersey, a truck was firebombed.
Is expected from Pope John Paul's revision of the Canon law. Sherry Henry hears them debate next. Sheila McCrae makes an appearance on the Arlene Francis Show, as does Mary Bruce, teacher of many of Harlem's finest dance stars. That's at
Good morning, everybody. That's right, Bruce. 750 million Catholics around the world have a new law to live by now. The Pope has made official all those changes that were brought about back in the 60s by the Second Vatican Council. The new law actually takes effect in November, but you should know that many of those changes have been put into effect already. Catholics are already living with the changes, but since they are now official, and there were a few surprises that came out with the new promulgation, we want to talk today about what these changes are, how American Catholics feel about them. Let me introduce my guest in the studio. Father Gommar DePauw is here. He's been a priest and a professor for over 40 years. He's founder of the Catholic Traditionalist Movement, Incorporated, and as I understand it, keeps a radio mass in progress every week in 80 countries with a traditional Latin Mass for listeners. Is that correct, Father?
That is correct, Miss.
And Malachi Martin is here. Formerly, he was a Jesuit professor. He's author of a book published by Putnam's called The Decline and the Fall of the Roman Church. I don't think I need to add, but I will anyway, that you can see Father Gommar DePauw is a very traditional voice of the church, and Malachi Martin is a far less traditional voice of the church, and we will have yet another liberal voice on the telephone. First, before we get to a telephone conversation I think we'll all find interesting, just very briefly, talk to us about the kind of changes, Father, that came about by the new law that was promulgated.
First of all, I think I should publicly state, which some seem to forget, that there is no one who has seen the full text of the new canon law.
That's right. Everybody's speaking of what they think the Pope is
I
saying.
have seen the drafts of it, perhaps more than most people have seen. But the official text has not been made public.
Took people by surprise, actually.
And not only that, my contacts in Rome told me that the very day Pope John Paul II signed the promulgation decree, he was still crossing out words and lines in the Code of Canon Law he was supposed to sign. Now, are we here again creating an unbelievable source of confusion later on? Are we going to have 2-3 texts saying this is the one the Pope signed, this one he didn't?
These are the changes he made the next day.
Just as they did with the decree by which Pope Paul VI allegedly eliminated the old Mass.
I guess we'll have to see that later, won't we? Let's talk about some of the changes that came. I know that the reasons for excommunication have been drastically dropped. There used to be some 37 offenses, and now it's down to 7. Can you just give us an idea of what is no longer an offense that leads to excommunication?
Yes. A typical example is Catholics who would send their children to non-Catholic schools to be educated in a non-Catholic religion were excommunicated. Now, if this was such a horrible thing to call for excommunication, then why are those excommunications not immediately eliminated? It makes no sense to me that if you send your child to a non-Catholic school on November the 26th, you are excommunicated. If you do it on November the 27th, you are no longer excommunicated. There is a lot of unbelievably hard to understand things in this.
Well, let me give everybody an idea of what will not excommunicate you anymore. As I understand, now you can be a member of the Masonic Order. Now you can publish books that defend heresy. You can read those books. You can manufacture and sell false relics. The church doesn't like these things, but you won't be excommunicated for them. I think that's the major difference. Priests and nuns have been asked to refrain from political office now. They cannot get involved in union management affairs, but you won't be excommunicated if you're cremated. You won't be excommunicated if you marry a non-Catholic. There are certain charges you will be excommunicated for. Malachi Martin, just give us an idea of those.
Abortion, attacking the Pope physically, falling into heresy, deliberately abandoning the faith. Those are the main ones that spring to mind.
The hardcore things.
They're the hardcore things for which excommunication still stands.
And in general, let's talk, Malachi Martin, about some of the other changes. As I understand it, priesthood is still an exclusive domain of men. That has not changed.
Yes, there's no even semblance of a movement to admit women to any rank of priesthood or the episcopacy.
However, women have a broader role now, don't they?
Yes, they can be diocesan assessors and chancellors even. They can be member of seminary boards, according to this new code. And they can be advisors, but they cannot rise beyond that. They
and
go beyond
Father,
that.
Men and women have broader roles. The laity, as I understand it, can now, in certain circumstances, perform weddings, funerals. They can give religious training. They can't say Mass, of course, but there are these new things that they can do. Any other major changes you can think of?
Well, as you correctly bring out, the big losers in this new code of canon law are the priests again. The priesthood is being destroyed before our own eyes, and the priests don't see it. The Second Vatican Council, which I hate to admit this, it's almost a shame these days to say this, I attended as a theological and canonical advisor. At the Second Vatican Council, the bishops moved up. They all became little popes. The Pope moved down. He is now the first, more or less the first, among equals. But the big losers are the priests. And then they wonder that the vocations to the priesthood are just dwindling away. Mm-hmm. Who wants to become a priest? What is there? What are you? A two-bit functionary among all others.
I tell my listeners that they would hear a very traditional view from Father Gommar DePauw. I will be back to him and Malachi Martin after some commercial messages. I also want to talk, when we get back, down in Maryland to Sister Margaret Mary Modi. She has a doctorate in canon law. She's a consultant for various religious congregations of both men and women. She's a liberal voice of the American Catholic Church. I want to talk to her how she feels particularly about the changes and non-changes that have to do with women.
I'm Mario Perillo. For almost 40 years, Perillo Tours has created...
1983 is here. How are you going to keep up with it? Well, one thing's for sure, it's going to bring a lot of changes in every area of the world, from international affairs to business, from the arts to the sciences. If you don't want to miss anything important, here's an easy solution. It's a special offer from the magazine with everything. That's time. Having time in your home is like getting 32 magazines in one. Time's got 32 departments to cover it all, from cinema to books, from education to the nation. It's the one magazine that brings you everything with depth and perspective, and Time's an even greater value now because of a special offer. If you call them, you'll get 26 weeks of Time payable in 3 easy installments of just $6.77 each. And you'll get a bonus with your subscription, Times Medical Reference Library. It's 4 paperback volumes covering everything in medicine, so you can look up what you need to know about symptoms and drugs, about nutrition and illness prevention. Call toll-free 1-800-541-2000, and you'll get 26 weeks of Time. That's the magazine with everything, plus the 4-volume medical library free. Operators are standing by. Call them 1-800-541-2000.
We shouldn't be doing this. It's crazy.
Why not? It's great.
I mean, in the middle of the week.
Turn on your dial where we talk about things I hope that matter to you, including, as we are today, the new canon law promulgated by the Pope last week, laws that Catholics must live by. Let's talk in Maryland to Sister Margaret Mary Modi. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning. Sister Margaret, let me ask you how you feel about those particular sections of the law that have to deal with women. Do you have any feelings you could give our audience?
Well, particularly, I think that we've had a major step forward for the Roman Catholic Church, and I don't think for many of us who have been in contact with Vatican II that we were terribly surprised with some of the things that have happened. Definitely, I would have to say that we didn't get as much as we'd like to get, but as in the Church, it's always a step at a time. So we have to be sort of satisfied with what's there and work toward the future in a very realistic way. I had some problem with what Father DePauw said about the priesthood being destroyed. I would think that the fact that the Holy Father, or the Pope, as he said, certainly became collegial with his bishops would be a cause for rejoicing. Because it also, what is the status of the priest today? And if the priest has brought the laity into greater awareness of ministry in the Church, certainly we should be happy about that. And in the new law, there are the clergy and the lay persons, and that's based on our service and our ministry, not on status.
Sister Margaret, am I correct in assuming that if you had had your way, you would have written women into the priesthood?
Well, I'm not definitely saying that I would have written them into the priesthood. Theologically, I see no reason why we can't have women ordained as priests.
Well, then let me ask you this, Sister. As I understand it, Vatican II was the first council that was called in the 20th century. Are there any further changes likely? You said you wanted to work towards the future. How does one work towards the future when so few councils are called?
Well, I think that we will never have a static law like we had with the 1917 Code. I think we've learned a very good lesson that this cannot be done.
So laws will be reviewed and changed?
I think they will be reviewed and checked periodically now and be changed, which the Holy Father certainly can do. And I feel that this we're going to respond now to social and cultural changes much more rapidly than we did in the past.
Would you think there will be any more changes regarding women within, let's say, the latter part of the 20th century?
I'm not sure, Sherry. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. And you asked me a question previously there, did I, work for the ordination of women? I would say I have no difficulty with it. However, that's not the place where I want to put my energies at the moment. Particularly if ordination continues the same understanding of ordained ministry, which has a status symbol to it. I can't see our ordination as solving the difficulties of the Church today. It's only going to layer them. But I do believe that we have to look for alternatives. And then we have to open other areas to women in decision-making areas. And I think that this is possible without ordination. For instance, participation of women in positions at the Synod of Bishops. The participation of women as lay ministers more broadly than the new proposed code allows. I think we have to work toward the regularizing of the status of married priests who still desire participation in the active ministry. And I think that the base for unordained ministers is so broad and there are so many needs that at this moment in time, I think we have to put our energies there.
And that's a calm and reasoned voice that is still looking for further change. Thank you, Sister Margaret, for your time. I appreciate it. We're back to the studio now. Father Gommar DePauw is, as I told you, founder of the Catholic Traditionalist Movement, Incorporated, and Malachi Martin, who's the author of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Church. Malachi Martin, what do you think of the changes? In general, it's been said that the canon law now is less legalistic and responding more to human needs. In general, how do you perceive the changes?
Well, Sherry, we have to look at this very, very rationally. Let me give you a hypothesis. If the idea in creating a code of law is to make it easier, more comfortable for people to belong to the church. And if the church is really a group of people who want to feel well together, feel good together, this code would get a mark of 8 out of 10. If the church is more than a group of people who just want to feel well together, if it is to present an ideal, if it is to be something which prepares you for heaven in this life by demanding sacrifices, by raising the tape of virtue high so that you have to make an effort, then this code stinks.
Oh, there's a man of few opinions.
Yes.
And rarely states them.
The decline and fall of the Roman Church, which is the title of my last book, is precisely illustrated by the emergence of this code, which, as we saw in the beginning of the show, has no definitive form yet. It is very weak in theology. From what we know of the code, if the provisions of the code are such as we have been told in the public newspapers, and the draft we've all seen, Father Gommar DePauw has seen some, I've seen some, the theology is extremely weak.
All right, well, give us an idea of specifics. Now, here's Sister Margaret saying that she wants things to go further in the way of involving women in particular and priests in general. She wants to broaden the lives of priests, includes marriage and children. In specific terms, how would you change it so it doesn't stink?
Well, I would, for instance, reinstate several excommunications. I would make it much more difficult for anybody to become a priest, to enter a seminary. I would tighten the rules about heresy, defending heresy, publishing wrong views, and that would mean that a lot of people would be drummed out of the church immediately or would submit again once more.
Would it be correct to say that some people would accuse you of going backwards in time then?
Oh yes, I certainly would go back in time and pick up where we left off, because we have left off something terribly valuable. Now, let me give you one example. For instance, the people of God. That's that's the way they describe the church in this new code. Now, the term "the people of God" is not a definition of the church. It is a sort of a poetical, religious description of the church with biblical overtones. It is not a theological concept. It has no foundation in formal theology. It is a biblical term which has to be explained. But it says nothing about the fact that the church is a spiritual organism which has an exterior organization which requires very strict rules. And in general, Sherry, here's the major point. If we are failing today, and there's no doubt about it, the word renewal is a laugh. We're not being renewed. We're plummeting by half in everything in the Catholic Church. If that is so, it is because we have given up the idea of ideals. There is no longer ideal. We must democratize the church. We must make it easy. It must become like the world around us. Finally, women must be able to do everything that a man does. The sister didn't go as far as that, but I'm sure she wouldn't refuse ordination, or episcopacy for that matter. I don't believe that that's the way you attract young people or old people.
You're really in basic agreement with Father Gommar DePauw,
yes.
Both of you want a much more straight-laced, strictly conceived, traditionalist view of the church, which gives people more of a structure and demands more of them and punishes them more.
And sets the tape high, so that to belong to this is a privilege. It's not an exercise of your democratic right. Now, you see, the difficulty is this, though, that the theology of the church is very, very weak at the present moment, and the theology behind this code is so putrid that it really disgusts one, except it makes you pity them. There is very bad theology behind this. and very bad theology of priesthood.
I'm sitting here wishing, I'm looking at that third chair, and I'm wishing that I had Bishop McGovero here, or one of the strong voices of the church as it is now
I know.
organized,
Why don't they come along and talk?
Why didn't I ask them? That's what I'm really sorry about. Let's come back, everybody. We will take your questions about this. This will be my question to the two of you.
Yes.
And we'll start with you, Father, when we get back. I want to know whether or not you think that the changes in the canon law will help stop the erosion of the church as we've seen it over the last 10 or 15, 20 years, the smaller numbers of men and women going into the priesthood and into convents, the smaller number of people who are actually practicing Catholics who go to church. Let's talk about that kind of decline and whether or not these changes will begin to stop that after these words.
Robinson Crusoe.
WNBC TV.
Homeowners, this is Stephen Parker, President.
Hi, Henry. We're talking about the new Catholic law promulgated by the Pope last week, signed according to Father Gommar DePauw, as he was still making changes in it. Malachi Martin is here. He's the author of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Church. Your questions now. 391-2800 is the telephone number. Use the New York City area code. It's 212-391-2800. What about this question, Father, whether or not the changes will indeed begin to bring people back to church and priests back into...
Well, first of all, may I say, when I came on this program, I was told I would find an opponent here in Father Malachi, Dr. Martin. They told me I would have a very intelligent opponent who would disagree with me. Obviously, this intelligent opponent came to the same intelligent conclusions that I reached, so I'm very happy about it.
You and I were both misinformed, weren't we?
Secondly, this good sister spoke about the joy the Pope felt, and we should all feel about this new code. Obviously, the sister is not aware. I had the text here when the Pope signed this decree, the 25th of this month. These were his words, officially given out by the Vatican Press Office. Now, quote, "We recommend ourselves to the mercy of God because this is a historical event, and it is up to those who come after us to judge what we have done." Does that sound like a man who is very proud and happy of what he is doing?
What do you think,
For one, I joined the Pope in imploring God's mercy on him and all responsible for that historic event, which those who come after us, as he said, will, I'm sure, they judge it. They will lament before long as just another milestone on the road to what historian Malachi Martin correctly called the decline and the fall of the Roman Church.
What do you think about bringing people back to church, though?
Sherry, there's no doubt in my mind at all. This is going to aid the exit from the church of more and more people. It's not going to help the erosion because the church is becoming faceless and nameless finally. It's not going to help.
And how about entry into the priesthood?
Oh well, they probably won't go as far as admitting women into the priesthood in my lifetime.
This is one point we disagree on, Dr. Martin.
Yes?
I think that before soon they'll find an American Catholic bishop who is willing to break the law and ordain a woman into the priesthood and face the Pope with the fact. As a matter of fact, I have been given the name of one who has said he is ready. But I won't mention any names.
Well,
I didn't want you to...
Let me ask you, though, quickly before we go to our listeners. You know, the fact is that the decline in numbers started before Vatican II.
That's not true.
And it didn't really... the changes in Vatican II didn't make people stop going to church.
I will give you the statistics if you want to. Up to 1965, the normal increment kept on all over the world in the church.
And the number of priests stayed in the church?
No, stayed incrementing all the time.
And you think that because of Vatican II, the numbers started dropping?
Well, put it like this. Coincidental with the promulgation of Vatican II, the interpretation of Vatican II, everything starts dropping, and it's a straight plummet line. I have a graph, which I'll give to anybody who wants it, of communicants, people going to confession, people being baptized, people being married in the church, people being divorced outside the church, people being ordained, people entering seminaries, number of monks, the number of abbots. It's a straight line down. It's not even a jog.
You're on WOR. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
My question has to do with the fact that it seems to me that the institution is becoming so preoccupied with its institutionalization that it's gotten away completely from what it was instituted in the first place to do, and that is to serve people. I was appalled
What's your question, ma'am?
with Father DePauw's idea that it was a penny ante job, that that's why people were turning away from the priesthood. To me, I haven't read anything that Christ, come on, that's what Christianity and the Catholic Church is about, Christ. It is not about these stupid men who fight about how many angels on the head of a pin. I like to hear him justify how he thinks this is now a penny ante job because all of a sudden somebody says something about a rule. Come on now, either you're interested in teaching Christ's message of love and forgiveness and what he came on earth to tell us, or you aren't.
I certainly agree that Christ came on earth. I make it a little more deeper than that. All canon law. And I have been a doctor and a professor of canon law for the longest time. The basic law of all church law is, in a paraphrase on what Cicero said, salus populi suprema lex, the salvation of the people, the salvation of souls as we call it, is the supreme law. All church directives must be aimed at saving souls. The church isn't here to fight the Defense Department. The church is here on earth not to get into politics, to save souls.
Do you feel like a penny ante priest?
No, with me,
Father?
No, I feel like the priest who by the grace of God tries to live by his vows as a priest. And those vows...
Do you know other priests who feel that they are in a penny ante job?
I never judge any other priest, period.
Well, then
Judgment
why
is
do
in
you
the hands
say
of God.
what you said?
I'm going to finish what I was saying. All laws of the church must be geared to the salvation of people. That means the salvation of souls. What that means is that the church exists not for politics, not to run bingo games, not to make money, not to get into banks like the Vatican Bank, but to bring people closer to God here on earth by increasing in their souls faith, hope, and charity.
You're saying that they're too secular now.
And by doing this, they hope to bring people into what we traditionalists call that perennial, that perpetual unity with God, which we call heaven.
Let's go on to another call then. Thank you for calling, ma'am. You're on WOR. Hello. Oh, I missed you. Let's see. Hello. There you are.
Good morning. You spoke about discouraging going back to the old views of the church. So people will feel it'll be a privilege to belong to such a church. Don't you feel that by going back to archaic views such as those, you would discourage parishioners from belonging to such a church?
These are
no, ma'am, I don't feel that at all. No, I don't feel that at all, ma'am.
But you speak about the salvation of souls. Why return to...
No, Father Gommar spoke about
that. And may I say about archaic, there is nothing more archaic than God and human nature. And as long as God and human nature will not change, the relationship, the basic relationship between God and human nature cannot change. And anyone who tries to do this is not doing you or anybody else a favor.
Thank you for calling. You're on WOR. Hello.
Yes, good morning.
Yes.
Thank you so much for a very, very interesting program. I am intrigued by Dr. Martin's comments on the change and wonder if perhaps his present situation and circumstances isn't allowed by the change in the church today. His personal.
You're talking about his personal circumstance, which is what? That he was a former Jesuit? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. Former.
In other words, that the very liberalization of the canon law now allows you a great deal more autonomy within and influence within the church. Is that what you're saying?
Well, my question is, he is critical of the change, which is becoming more liberal. And yet he is now a former Jesuit author writing books for a profit.
I hate when a discussion becomes personal, but let's go personal for a while. My personal status was regulated by the Pope long before Vatican II ended. and depended on the old code of canon law, within which there was room for the status that I opted for. It sounds awful, of course, and I suppose it's not meant like that, to say somebody writes books for profit. But why do you think I should write them so? Chiefly to spread the ideas I have, and secondly, to live by them. The labor is worthy of his hire. So I really think she's being naughty, turning the discussion off in that direction. Now, as regards the liberalization, it was no liberalization that permitted me to attain the status I have attained. It was the decision of Pope Paul VI in the old law.
I'm going to move on because
Sure.
I don't want to stay on a personal note, but I do think she brings up a point. The very canon law changes that allow more latitude for priests and who are moving in a more humanistic direction and allow women to do more things within the parish and all those things. It's a broadening of the rules, which people like you would be suddenly more mainstream.
No, I'm not more mainstream by this new law. I'm not more mainstream by this new law.
Certainly not the way you think. You're on WOR. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, first of all, I'm a little disappointed in the representation you have there today. I don't feel it really.
Well, wait just a minute. I said that first.
Yes, I heard you say it, and I realized you felt that way. My question is, they point out, I believe it was Dr. Martin said something about the weakness of the theology in the Code of Canon Law. I feel that it's strongly grounded in the theology of the sacrament of baptism, in which all people in the church share in the ministry. That is one of the primary things that comes from the sacrament of baptism, which is then shared in a special way by priests in the sacrament of holy orders. But we all share in the ministry. This is already being done in the church. It's one of the strengths of the renewal in the church. I feel very strongly about it.
Give me a question. Could I have a question?
Yes, that is my question. Why do they say that there is a weakness in the theology of the recent Code of Canon Law?
Well, what the good lady has just enunciated is bad theology. It has nothing to do with theology of the Catholic Church at all. Baptism does not confer any ministry. Baptism does one thing and one thing only. It eliminates original sin and makes you capable of going to heaven. Ministry be damned. It has no theological effect on ministry whatever.
Do you have anything you want to add to that, Father, or should we go
there again, the question is, are those changes, as they are introduced now, are they going to bring people closer to God? Anyone who says that is living in a ridiculous dream world. Is anybody going to get closer to God now because he can now send his children to a non-Catholic school? He can now tell his wife that his wife of 20 or 30 or 40 years standing, bye-bye, I was immature when I married you. Is that going to bring the people closer to God and closer to heaven? Not in my book.
We're coming back. More questions after these words. House minutes here in the hour will be devoted to your questions. Father Gommar DePauw is here. Dr. Malachi Martin, who is the author of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Church. You're on WOR. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes. Can either gentleman tell me why is the Pope still against priests marrying when in the Eastern Rite the priests have married, they are still being allowed to marry? Why does the Pope feel that in the Western Rite, if priests married, they would be maybe lesser priests? I have no idea what his feeling is on this.
And indeed, you feel that could be a more liberal situation?
Yes.
All right, Father.
Well, number one, the reasons for this is that the Church growing in this field because there's certainly not a divine law requirement. Some of the apostles were certainly married, but through the centuries, the Church wisely concluded that not only will the priest more be an example of our Lord himself, who never married, but mainly to remain so independent and so available to all families that he could not possibly do so if his main duty would be his first own natural
Do you think
family.
the priests in the Eastern Church are incapable of following God's law?
No, I'm not saying this, but they tell me, I meet with them because they are priests in good standing, they tell me, don't ever give up the celibacy and what they still call the Latin rite.
The Eastern
Yes, they tell me
priests
that.
tell you that?
Because there is no question that as a rule, a priest is much more free to make himself available.
Nobody forces
24
those
hours
men to marry, do they? In the Eastern Church,
No,
they don't get a whip
they
and
have a different
chair out there and
cultural
force them to.
and a different historical background. As a matter of fact, they have to marry before they are ordained, though. Once they are ordained, they cannot marry.
Another question. Thank you. You're on WOR. Hello.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to ask your guests about how they feel about the instruction that today's Catholic children are receiving. I myself have three children, two of whom are in school right now, and unfortunately I am not able to send them to a Catholic school. I am appalled at the instruction they do receive in the Sunday school. It's just, I have 12 years of Catholic education. My husband has 16, including 8 of Jesuit education, and it's.
I can hear the frustration in your
Ma'am,
voice.
I'll tell you honestly, I sympathize with you. Even if your children were going to a Catholic school, the instruction would be appalling. They wouldn't even know anything about Christ or about the church or about salvation. The responsibility rests, I know it's tough for me to say this to you, on you and your husband, because those who are supposed to give them instruction in Catholic schools are ignoramuses. They have no theology, they have no formal instruction, and some of them don't even believe the fundamental truths of the Catholic faith. That includes priests and nuns.
Another call. You're on WOR. Hello.
Hello?
You understand, Dr. Martin, I slipped right past that. I didn't comment on what you said because I tell you that is an incendiary remark, and it's a whole nother hour I would have to spend on the air to get past it. You're on WOR. Hello.
Hello?
You're on the air.
Okay. I have a question in reference to what the Pope feels. Hello?
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Okay. The Pope thinks about divorce?
Miss, you've left your radio up. We tell everybody to turn the radio down. Just talk to me straight out. Don't listen to your radio.
Yes, about divorce.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry. Let's just go to another question. I'm sorry. You don't understand. You have to turn your radio down. You're on WOR. Hello.
Hello. Good morning. Thank you for your program. I should just like to know if change is not ever to be permitted in the church, how are we expected it to progress or to attract people? Things are changing every day. There's nothing permanent but it, and I think it's our only hope.
What a very good question.
Can I try to give an answer to it? You have to make a distinction between the basic things. Of course the church must change on certain things. I have been saying this long ago. When I became a young professor of theology and canon law years and years ago, I said that it was high time to update certain things in the church. And I was considered a dangerous liberal then. The only thing is, today they are updating and changing things that cannot be changed. The very basics. I give you an example. When I go to the bank with the few cents I have, I expect the latest computers and all the latest machines. But that banker better holds down to that unchangeable fundamental rule that $2 and $2 make 4, and not 4, 5, or 3.95.
Any addition, Dr. Martin, or shall I go on?
No, that
says it. You're on WOR. Hello.
Hello. I'm in basic agreement with the points of view expressed by your guests, but I'm also a Catholic, and I feel like I'm bound to follow whatever the Pope says.
Now, that's a very good point.
What do I do?
Well, let me ask the question this way. Dr. Martin, are you going to follow what the Pope says?
Oh, I will obey the Pope in any law that he promulgates.
And Father DePauw?
I will obey any law which is not contradicting the laws of the Church of the past and God's law.
Will you decide?
Well, by the virtue of my baptism and my ordination power, I have every talent to distinguish poison from healthy food. And I will not eat poison for anybody.
No poison. Coming back.